Hello, and welcome to the Group 1 introduction of the Fauxbi Offensive Tournament. Because this is the first episode, I'm just going to do a little bit of background. This is a tournament for mixed formation battle groups, where each different entry will use one of three different division types, be it armoured divisions. Oh dear, can you just not do that while I'm trying to record the intro? No, okay, fine. Well, let's hope that isn't what happens in the actual tournament. Okay, back to the introduction. Where was I? Completely lost my place. So, entries will be divided into groups of between 3 and 4 different entries, depending on how many... contestants, depending on how many entries we finally get. Each group will be a miniature league, where each contestant will fight each other contestant once, and the winner of the groups will move on to a single elimination bracket. There's more information and details in the video description, and you can get links to the full rules down there. So, with that out of the way, let's start talking about the contestants. Here we have a slightly battered and bruised First Autonomous Division by Chaotic Ping. No doubt when there's an actual enemy there, they'll behave better. Let's hope. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the various vehicles that make up this entry. So, let's start with this chap up here. This is the Ostrogoth. This is a gunship class. This is the single largest allowed vehicle type in the tournament. It has exactly one of them. I believe it is armed with, let me just check my notes. Where have I put it? Oh dear, if you could just stay still, this would be so much easier. Right. It is armed with a single 500mm advanced cannon. You can see it there poking out the front, firing HE shells. So that's him. An interesting look. I think he's supposed to have more of a wing there, but yeah, that keeps happening. Anyway, let's move on to our next vehicle type, the Delta 335. Just for future reference, I am not going to remember these names for the actual tournament because numbers aren't terribly memorable, but I'll do my best. So here we can see this chap is I think this is just some kind of anti-aircraft tank, I suppose. It's a support class, and it is armed with 2 twin 250mm servo cannons. There are 4 of these in the formation. I think they make up much of the raw firepower. Next, we have 12 of these. I believe you are the 312. Yep, the Delta 312. Support armed with 2 6-barreled 139mm flat cannons. As I say, there are 12 of these. I think these guys are just intended to be anti-missile defense. Maybe they'll shoot other stuff, I'm not entirely sure. Next we have the Delta 540, again a support class. This is armed with, I had to count them up, that's a lot of missiles. One set of 30 4-block missiles at the back and another set of 84 block missiles at the front. That's a lot of missiles. Next up we have the Delta 221, which is armed with a 1553mm cram and 2 500mm HE advanced cannons. They are these things on the side. This is a fairly unusual design feature. I first thought this was purely aesthetic, but there is actually gun parts in there, and they do fire 500mm HE shells. So, as I say, that's interesting. Oh yes, and also they've got these fixed autocannons. Not sure how useful fixed autocannons will be, but let's find out. And I believe... oh no, what's the Delta 221? Have I covered that? Oh, yep, literally just talking about him. Right. Oh dear. Merry-go-round there. So, that is the first autonomous division by Chaotic Ping. Right, on to our next entry. We have... I wish I'd planned this better. We have the Canesian 342nd Imperial Armoured. Let's load them in. This is an armoured division type, made up, as you can see, primarily by battle tanks with a couple of missile launchers at the back and these two helicopters. So let's have a detailed review. We'll do the helicopters first before they fly off, as they tend to do. Just going to build view. As you can see, these are some very nice helicopters, replicas. Fairly meaty advanced cannon on the side there, which is, let me just check my notes, 106mm firing Hess shells, along with 10 6-block missile launchers and 4 5-block missile launchers. So these guys will be there for airborne fire support. So yep, as you can see, pretty cool. Right, moving on next. We have the T-54C Tornado main battle tank. These make up the bulk of the forces, with 6 of them in total. These are armoured class, and they fire 422mm Hess shells. So that's a fairly meaty shell. It looks like they're a fairly solid thing. I like the details on the back there. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that's a good look all around there. Very sloped armour look. Then next up we have the T-56G Tempest main battle tank. There are a total of 2 of these, as you can see right here next to each other at the front. These are slightly larger, armed with 450mm Hess shells. Again, pretty cool. Liking them a lot. Sort of semi-realistic design. Should be good. Okay, next we have these 2 missile launchers at the back. We've got this smaller of the 2 here, the L-12B Phalanx, armed with, as you can see, 8 missiles there. And then next to him we have the L-12A Lombard. Very similar, just slightly larger. I don't know if they had to cut down on resource usage slightly just to squeeze everything into the resource limit. Let's see. They have, what's that, 16 missiles there? 16 6-block missiles, yep. And yep, there's just a single one of those. So yeah, that's it for the Canesian Empire forces. So, let's move on to the next entrant, which is the Commandant Omega Furor First Wave Forces by Paradoxical Enigma. And yes, that is a bit of a mouthful, but there we go. I think that wins the record for the longest name of a force yet. And a little spring out of the ground, as they like to do. This is purely a ground-based division. It's an armoured division. So let's start at the front and work our way around. This is the HAHT Mark III Fenrir. There are 5 of these, making them the most numerous of the vehicles in this division. They're armed with 6-barreled 80mm belt-fed sabot cannons. So you can expect them to be putting out a lot of firepower. Individually not that damaging, but I'm guessing the sheer weight of it will do some work. So yep, there we have it. The mainstay of the Commandant Omega Furor First Wave forces. So next up we have, what's this guy? The MMST Mark 88 Vector. There are 2 of these in the forces, armed with, you can see a couple of little autocannons on the front there, but primarily missiles. It's quite a few missiles loaded on this. 10 5-block missiles and 6 7-block missiles. What you can't see right now is that this section right here, when there's enemies near, it folds up and reveals yet more missiles. So, very nice, very cool. I do like it, pretty unusual. So, next up, we have, who are you? The ADST Mark 78 Caesar. This is a support class vehicle. I believe this is the missile defense, armed with twin 250mm flak shells. I think that's the entirety of its armaments. It's a pretty, it seems a bit bigger than all the others. No heavy armour though, so may or may not be as tough or tougher than the others. It's hard to say, but it's a fairly big gun. I'm not sure if it's configured to fire at regular targets or if it's purely intended for anti-missile work. I guess we'll need to find out when we see it in action. And then, last but not least, we have the Fauxbi Mark 65 Damocles Blade, which is another armoured class. There are 2 of these in the force. As you can see, they've got a whole bunch of autocannon turrets slapped on the top, but the primary armament is this very long barreled 500mm HE cannon. So, I don't know, but I'm guessing these guys' job is to sit at the back and lob these massive shells in, do some damage like that. As you can see, a whole load of heavy armour up the top there, so hopefully these guys will be pretty tanky too. Let's find out. That's it for the Commandant Omega for our first wave forces. And our final first group entrant is the Z-10 air control by Kurotsova. Hopefully I'm not butchering anyone's names here. I probably am. Let's find out. Who knows? Quickly checking my notes for the Z-10 air control. Right, here we are. So, this is the only airborne division in Group 1, and as you can see, this is going to be fun to demonstrate because all the airborne units like to fly off instantaneously. Well, let's start with these guys. These are the Pigeon class. That's weird. I suspect from the depths might have just gone funny because things are not supposed to be able to fly through each other. Yeah. Well, let's carry on anyway because this is just a demo. Yeah, so these guys are just transports. They're completely unarmed. They're required in airborne divisions if you want to bring in landcraft. So let's talk about the landcraft. Hopefully I can give you a nice demo. Hopefully From the Depths hasn't gone too crazy. So, first off, we have the... No, that's the wrong people. We have 4 X-33 Ambassador Mark 1s. I believe this is them. They are support class. They're armed with, somewhat unusual, they have this fixed 1225mm cram, as well as a 333mm Hesh and Heat armed advanced cannon. So something kind of reminiscent of early sort of, well, World War II tanks. Bit of the Sherman to this, I think, in my opinion. Could be wrong, but it's pretty cool looking. Then we have, very similar, I think it's just a variant on the design. We have 2 of these X-34 Sky Molder class support vehicles armed with the same 1225mm cram, as well as a 6-barreled 71mm Sabo. I think these are intended to be their air defense. That's it for the ground vehicles. Let's see if we can grab some of the flying vehicles. What are you? You are an AH-2 Flonderklap Mark II 205. These are helicopters. So you can see there are 3 of them in the force, and they are somewhat less realistic looking, but still clearly helicopters, armed with a combination of 8 missiles, 8 5-block missiles, and I think a very similar 6-barrel 71mm. Oh no, this time they fire HESH, these cells, so I think these guys are intended to take out ground-based armour targets. So it'd be interesting to see how well they can achieve that task. And we finally have a single AT-40 Albatross. Ah yes, no, that isn't the final one. That's a lie. Let's look at this guy. This is a B-5 Pitchfork. Yes, there are 3 of these in the force. These are jet aircraft, as you can see here. They are armed with a whole load of missiles. That's 16 5-block missiles. For some reason he's just gently falling out of the sky there. I think again these are intended as, I'm not sure, I don't know if they're ground attack or intended for air superiority. He's not demonstrating himself particularly well right now. Again, I think this is just what From the Depth does when you leave the AI to its own devices rather than giving it an enemy to fight. Finally, let's find the Albatross. He's managed to not damage himself, so, but where is he? This is the Albatross. This is another gunship class, so again substantially larger than all the others. As you can see here, he's armed with these 3 fairly large 400mm HESH cannons, so, and an awful lot of flare launchers along the top. So hopefully this guy will be able to put out a lot of damage with that. Yeah, flying along off into the distance. He seems pretty happy. So yeah. Right, well that's it for the Zetan Air Control and the Group 1 entrance. So, thanks for watching, and on to the battles.